congratulations to Australia. You fell for the false flag. Your government did. And now you're paying the price for it. Even more freedoms are taken away from you. And now you're going to be accused of thought crimes because of that false flag. It worked perfectly. Why do you think Israel does false flags? They know how to do them. They always have a purpose, and they'd always serve their purpose. So you remember how we said the Australian shooting at that Hanukkah festival on Bondi Beach? They said it was done by an ISIS shooter, which I explained to you that ISIS is actually working with Al-Qaeda, working with Israel, working with the Mossad, working with the United States. They're all in bed together. Trump just welcomed the head Al-Qaeda guy in Syria to the White House. ISIS, when their fighters would get wounded in Syria, they'd get treated in Israel. So they're all working together. And so when that happened, I'm like, oh, this is a false flag. This has been sponsored by Israel. And what is it to do? It's to try to get people to crack down, meaning Western countries, to crack down on free speech because they've lost the narrative and they're scrambling. They're buying social media platforms because people are telling the truth about Israel. They bought TikTok. They bought 1/6 of the American media so they can try to get back control of the narrative about Israel and how people are turning on them. And then now they're doing false flags in Australia so they can pressure governments to crack down on free speech because that's the only thing they have left. They have to crack down on free speech and control the narrative. And so here it happened. It already happened. So here is Israel finally taking Australia's freedom away. Australia is going to implement hate speech laws following the Bondi false flag. The government will also create a blacklist of organizations who promote speech Israel doesn't like. False flag success. I mean, talk about a kangaroo court. Am I right? They took your guns, and now they're going to round you up. What are the odds China saves Australia since we won't? You heard it here first. Here we go.
It is clear we need to do more to combat this evil scourge, much more. A special envoy
So they have to do more to combat the evil scourge of anti-Semitism, which has been invented mostly by the ADL and Israel itself. While you're doing a genocide and you're conflating Zionism, that's why the genocide's being done in the name of Zionism, which is stealing other people's lands for an Israel state, for a Jewish supremacist, racist apartheid state. That's what Zionism is. As they do a genocide and for Zionism, they conflate Judaism with Zionism, and so then people start to be anti-Semitic because the people committing a genocide are conflating Zionism with Judaism on purpose. So when you go against Zionism, they can call you an anti-Semite. And so now they go, look, anti-Semitism's everywhere. No, it's anti-Zionism. And if it is anti-Semitism, it's because you people have conflated Zionism with Judaism. And so now they've scared the hell out of Australia, and Australia is going to now crack down on their own people in defense of Israel and BS anti-Semitism. Here we go.
It is clear we need to do more to combat this evil scourge, much more. A special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Gillian Siegel, has delivered a report that sets out further steps we can take. The Australian government adopts and fully supports the plan to combat anti-Semitism. We'll continue to work through the implementation of the 13 recommendations in consultation with the Jewish community and the envoy. And of course, the first recommendation was the adoption of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism that the government adopted.
So they have already adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which it means any criticism of Israel, basically. You're an anti-Semite. Any criticism of Zionism, you're an anti-Semite. So they've already done that. Australia's already done that. They're already turning their country into a place with less freedom of speech than China. They've already done that. You know, Candace Owens is banned in China. She's not allowed to go into the country. Not in China, in Australia. You know, Candace Owens is not allowed to go into Australia because she said she doesn't like a genocide. And then she got banned from Australia faster than you could say false flag in Australia.
Today, I'm announcing a significant number of additional actions to build on the plan. Firstly, the Attorney-General and Minister for Home Affairs will develop a package of legislative reforms to crack down on those who spread hate, division and radicalisation.
So now, if all the government has to do is say, oh, your speech is spreading division. By the way, isn't that your right as a free person to advance ideas? Well, I don't understand this. But I guess I do understand it because they don't have a First Amendment in Australia like we do here. They don't have it in the UK. So consequently, they're putting people in prison for thought crimes. So what this guy is doing, what they're doing in Australia now is they're letting you know they're going to ramp up putting people in prison for thought crimes, because that's what this is. These are thought crimes. These aren't actual crimes. These are thought crimes, just like George Orwell warned us about. You're being punished, arrested, imprisoned for wrong think. That's what George Orwell called it, wrong think. And that's what he's saying. So these aren't actual crimes. These are just the government controlling your thoughts.
The National Security Committee has agreed that changes will include the following 5 points. Agreed changes will include: 1, aggravated hate speech offence for preachers and leaders who promote violence. Secondly, increased penalties for hate speech promoting violence.
Hate speech. Again, why am I not allowed to hate stuff? Hate speech is invented. It's made up. And who decides what's hate? Who decides? What if I just have a criticism? That's hate. If I have a criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu, that's hate. What if I have a criticism of Israel? That's hate. What if I have a criticism of a genocide? That's hate. What if I have a criticism of Zionism in general? That's hate. What if I have a criticism of IDF soldiers targeting children and shooting them in the head? That's hate. Really? What if I say all Muslims are bad? That's okay. Oh, I didn't know. What if I say Palestinians are the people who are? How if I say Hamas are terrorists? How about I say Palestinians are terrorists? That's okay. What if I say Israel terrorists? That's hate.
Thirdly, making hate an aggravating factor in sentencing crimes for online threats and harassment. Fourthly, developing a regime for listing organisations whose leaders engage in hate speech promoting violence or racial hatred.
So they're creating a list. They're checking it twice. Gonna find out who's on board with Israel. Nice.
And fifthly, developing a narrow federal offence for serious vilification based on race and or advocating racial supremacy.
That's what Zionism is. Zionism is advocating racial supremacy. The whole damn country of Israel is based on ethno-supremacy of Jewish people. They're the chosen people. That's the whole point.
For Home Affairs will also have new powers to cancel or reject visas for those who spread hate and division in this country or would do so if they were allowed to come here.
So that's what they got. They've already banned Candace Owens. So anybody telling the truth about Israel is going to be banned in Australia. How do you feel to be an occupied country in Australia? Occupied by murderous, genociding Zionists who don't give a crap about you and want to take away your freedom of speech and put you in jail.
Gonski has agreed to lead a 12-month task force, which will include the envoy, to ensure the Australian education system prevents, tackles and properly responds to anti-Semitism.
So they're going to indoctrinate your children. Into Zionism. That's what they're doing. In Australia, so this is what happens. I guess that a lot of people would say that this is what happens when they take your guns. Then they take your freedom. Then they take your freedom of speech. Then they take away your ability to think for yourself. Then they make it a crime to have a thought that the government doesn't approve of. That's what people say. I was always against that position.
I, of course, acknowledge that more could have been done, and I accept my responsibility for the part in that as Prime Minister of Australia. But what I also do is accept my responsibility to lead the nation and unite the nation, because what people are looking for.
How do you unite the nation around criminalizing their thoughts and taking away their freedom at the behest of another country, a country committing a genocide right now in 4K? How does that unite the country? How does that unite it turns out it doesn't. And of course, this guy's a charlatan. Of course, he's a charlatan. Of course, he's a charlatan leading Australia. Of course he is. They can't wait to take away. What is it about Australia? I mean, they just love taking your freedoms away. I mean, I was there. People were still psychologically damaged, going through trauma from the COVID lockdowns in Australia.
At this time isn't more division. They are looking to come together.
Yeah, you are dividing your own country. That's what you're doing, and you're pretending other people are doing it. So anybody who has a criticism of Israel, Zionism, a genocide, Benjamin Netanyahu, the slaughter of children, the false flags that they pull off constantly, anybody who has a problem with that is now a criminal. In Australia, your prime minister just told you. He just told you, you're a criminal. You have to think the way Benjamin Netanyahu wants you to think. And if you don't think the way Benjamin Netanyahu wants you to think, we're going to make you a criminal, put you in jail. Wow. Here's what Glenn Greenwald, he says, Israel demanded the European Union countries adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in their criminal hate speech laws, and they obeyed. Australia did it yesterday. The U.S. can't do it directly due to the First Amendment, but Trump has forced on American universities. But Trump has forced it on American universities. He's done that. Some of the banned views. Here's some of the banned views. If you go by the IHRA, here's some of the banned views. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. Well, Ben Shapiro certainly falls under that. So that's now anti-Semitic. If I say Congressman Randy Fine is more loyal to Israel than the United States, that's considered anti-Semitism. If I say Ben Shapiro is more loyal to Israel than the United States, that's considered anti-Semitism, even though obviously those people are. So telling the truth is now anti-Semitic. You know, there's a saying, you used to be anti-Semite if you hated Jews. Now you're an anti-Semite if Jews hate you. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, for example, by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. It is. So again, this is all just telling the truth. It's now anti-Semitism, and Australia is going along with it. And if you tell the truth, you're going to jail too. Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism. For example, claims of Jews killing Jesus are blood libel to characterize Israel or Israelis. This is real. This is what Australia has just adopted. I think they actually adopted this in 21. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israel policy to that of the Nazis. Well, of course, it's easy to do that. Of course, they have to make this stuff illegal because this reveals that Zionism and the Israeli project is one based in racism, based in land theft, based on slaughter and terrorism. So they have to make the telling of these truths illegal. Whoa. So of course, there's many comparisons you could make of Israel's conduct right now with Nazi Germany. There's plenty. And Jews are making them. Norman Finkelstein. That's not. It's coming from Jew. You know how I know? Because Jews are doing it. Not Muslims. Jews. Holding Jews collectively responsible for actions of the state of Israel. So these are anti-Semitic acts are criminal. So congratulations to Australia. You fell for the false flag. I mean, your government did. And now you're paying the price for it. Even more freedoms are taken away from you. And now you're going to be accused of thought crimes because of that false flag. It worked perfectly. Why do you think Israel does false flags? They know how to do them. They always have a purpose, and they'd always serve their purpose. Hey, come see me on tour January 11th in Waikiki, Hawaii, and January 30th in Los Angeles at the Comedy Store. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.